I only had one Motion Boom Plus, and then they sent me another, and I had 2 Motion Boom Pluses, and the world was good. And do you know what? I only had one Tribit Stormbox Blast, and then they sent me another one. And I thought, yes, that's absolutely brilliant. Oh, finally, get speakers for nothing, speakers that are worth getting for nothing. And now here's the thing. I've already done 2 Motion Booms against 1 Stormbox Blast because I only had one at the time. And then I cheekily said to Tribit, I said, look, I've done a video, 2 Motion Booms Pluses versus the Tribit Stormbox Blast. And, you know, it did okay to about maximum volume. But when, of course, against 2, it couldn't really hold its own, could it? And I said, well, look, it's up to you. But, you know, maybe if I did 2 Tribit Stormbox Blasts versus a pair of Motion Boom Pluses. The names ain't easy because they've all got Stormboxes of 1 million speakers. Motion Boom has another speaker. The Pluses and mixing up all the names. What were you talking about, Al? Oh yeah, I particularly told them maybe you'd like me to do that. Anyway, the long and short is you can see there's 2 on the table. They did say yes, that sounds like a good idea, Al, and it's not often I hear that without the name Boomy Bass in the sentence. So I got 2 of them, I got 2 of them. And there's only one thing to do, and that's one set of lights. I'm doing this because there's a whole mob out there that seem to just don't like the speaker simply because of the lights. So just say, look, twice the lights. If you have a power cut, you are sorted, even if you don't have a lantern, like the Vida do with their lantern thingy where it's got a light as well. So we're going to compare these 2 together. As I hope by now we all know, expectations, you add a second speaker, you've doubled surface area because you've got all the drivers doubled up now, about 3 decibels. You've doubled the power, so we're 90, on paper 90 watts, however that's measured, we don't know, 90 watts. It's only got 880 watts, another 3 decibels, that's 6 decibels again. Twice as loud would be 10 decibels, so a lot louder, but not quite twice as loud, but certainly noticeably louder. Don't forget, when we say twice as loud, that's how you, in the way you perceive it. Decibels being logarithmic and all that. Now, get on with it out. Yeah, I will. So, we're going to do this. We're going to start off at low volume. Let's say we've got default modes, we've got other presets we can use, and we have custom EQ on both of these speakers. So that's great, isn't it? Soundcore for a long time had a great multi-band graphic equalizer, proper graphic equalizer, and Tribit recently have come out with their app. It is improving. You do get multi-band EQ in their app as well, and it works quite nicely. You can significantly change the sound. Why do we say it's nice to get EQ in the app when all the time now you could just get a third party and all that? It's because made to work with the speaker. It's not layering EQ on EQ. Hopefully, they're all embedded into the firmware. That becomes the EQ. And of course, the app knows where all the peaks and the dips are in this, and they're going to work safely with the limiters of the speaker anyway. So you won't have the nightmare of losing all your volume because you use the third-party app. Blah blah blah. They've given you safe headroom. You've lost a load of volume because in case they don't know where the peaks are. You don't. Let's not push it too much. I thought I heard the phone ringing, but it couldn't possibly be behind me. So low volume, about 40% on. I consider that low volume for the speakers like this, and 40% would be about 45%. We're going to hear a Tribit Stormbox Blast, yes, versus a pair of Soundcore Motion Boom Pluses, yes.
You love when I lose control, and I've always tried to hide it, but you see down to my soul. I'm a sinner in love, baby. Don't wanna hurt ya, but I'm a sinner. Save me, or I'll take you down with me. with me. Down, 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 down with me. Down, 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 down. Down, 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 down with me. Down, 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 down.
The difference between the sound in these two speakers, oh, and I think I was going to mention, you've got all these different set EQs and the ability to use your own custom EQ on both of these speakers, but I am doing this in default mode. I had to choose what I think would probably be of most interest and fairest. I think default mode versus default mode, and the reason is because these speakers, when you buy them, you're thinking bass. They're saying boom plus, so they should be giving you lots of bass. This is the Stormbox Blast, so blasting away the bass. They're supposed to be heavy bass speakers. You can't get more bass than in X bass mode, even if you go to custom EQ unless you ridiculously balance the sliders and do tons of volume. That's why I've done default rather than custom EQ. Custom EQ will be less bass than using custom EQ, even if you've pushed the bass to maximum. The clearly deeper, fuller bass on the Stormbox Blast. Plenty of punch, but not deep bass on the Motion Boom Plus, along with a bright signature, a very thinnish sound compared to the warmth of the Tribit Stormbox Blast. And therefore, its tuning does suit low volume. You're going to get a bit more clarity. Just the fact that we got so much more bass at low volumes, where there is a lot of bass adjustment going on, is going to make it sound a bit muddy. So it's going to be what you're listening for. If you're listening for clarity and speech, clearly the better tuning is suited to low volumes when you're using default mode on the Soundcore Motion Boom Plus. But you may just want a decent old thump, and you'll still get a decent old thump, but it will dominate and make it sound a bit muddy in terms of clarity in vocals at lower volumes. Clear. But one thing we know is you separate two, you've added one speaker, that sounds great anyway, but suddenly you've got two of them, you've got wide stereo, you can separate them, you can create, some sort of soundstage, some sort of 3D image in front of you, and it's so much more immersive, and the sound becomes more shimmering, I call it, and maybe less focused than with a single speaker. But it's so much more enjoyable. It's just a whole different type of listen. So that's going to be great on both of these. I'm talking about the benefit of the tuning. The tuning means, because I call it quite a thin sound, not full-bodied and warm, it's going to suit making it sound a bit more airy and open. So in terms of having a 3D sort of image, I do think the tuning lends itself more to the Motion Boom Plus, and you'll probably hear more of the way it explodes out in terms of the sound far away from the speaker, more so than the Stormbox Blast. We'll go up in volume. We'll take it to proper neighbour annoying levels, about 70% volume.
Tell all your friends that I'm crazy and drive you mad, that I'm such a stalker, a watcher, a psychopath. They tell them you hate me and dated me just for laughs. So why do you call me and tell me you want me back, you maniac? Wrecked your car, called me crying in the dark. Now you're breaking my heart, so I show up at your place right away. Wipe the tears off of your face while you beg me to stay. Well, people like you always want back what they can't have, but I'm past that and you know that, so you should turn back to your rap back till I'm on trash. Tell all your friends that I'm crazy and drive you mad, that I'm such a stalker, a watcher, a psychopath. They tell them you hate me and dated me just for laughs. So why do you call me and tell me you want me back, you maniac? You maniac. You maniac. You maniac. Psychopathic, don't be so dramatic. We had magic, but you made it tragic.
we're talking proper volumes. For my money, although the obvious differences that we've already mentioned between the actual signature sound of both these speakers, full-bodied, warm, but clearer, but thinner, with less bass extension on the Motion Boom Plus. We do have a 5.5 kilohertz dip. Well, when I say that's certainly on a pure measurement. And in the real world, you're going to start getting dip problems almost 3 to about 6 kilohertz. It's quite wide. There is an issue around there. When you add a second speaker, and obviously there's more interaction going on, and you're more likely to be a bit further away from the speaker, that's going to be even less of an issue as it gets, to your ears, gets smoothed over. So it's definitely there, but the way it affects the sound will change depending on the volume and whether you've got 1 or 2 speakers, how much smoothing over in that particular area you're going to get. But it does rob it of clarity, no matter 1 or 2 speakers and how far you're listening. For me, this is a big win-win-win, and this is why I love my Tribit Stormbox Blast around those sort of volumes. It's proper deep bass. We're in X-bass mode. It is the bass heavy mode, and it's the least clear mode. You can certainly EQ it to have really great bass, just not quite as much as X-bass mode, and with a more balance, a bit more clarity, not quite the way they tuned it. You can't actually fix that 5.5 kilohertz in the app, but you can certainly work around it, pushing other peaks. As it happens, around that same area, we've got a little bit of a peak, certainly on the newer Motion Boom Plus. It was a bit further up the peak on the old, well, this is the old one, that's the new one. What are you talking about, old and new? I'm not old. Well, I am, and you're probably new. But here's the thing. Motion Boom Plus was, we know now, rushed to market, maybe because of the Tribit Stormbox Blast. Had many issues, not least the way it had been tuned. We know that because the last 2 firmwares, I should mention that last 2 firmwares have fixed that, and they fix it well by getting rid of the 6 kilohertz peak they actually put in and thought it was a good idea in the first firmware, and by reducing the mids and highs relative to the bass. So it just makes the bass, as I was talking before, smooth out the rest of the frequency response. The flip side of that is you've lost volume. It was blinking loud when we first got it. It's still loud, but not quite as loud. So it's got the almost opposite in the 3 to 6 kilohertz region, and that's responsible for a lot of the differences, the really stark, obvious differences between them in terms of the tuning. But we're also much stronger on the bass. In the signature mode, for me, it is a weird tuning, and there is a lack of mids. Can you make it up in custom EQ? Absolutely. Check out my Instagram, where I've got my custom EQs, and we just got a fuller, all helping to make it sound warm in those mids, nicely, quite balanced mode actually for an X-bass mode on a speaker like this. So we could say Tribit Stormbox, Soundcore Motion Boom Plus, more of an outdoor speaker where upper bass counts more and clarity counts for more, rather than the warm, fuller sound and deeper bass of the Tribit Stormbox Blast. Whereas the Blast, certainly it sounds really decent indoors, but that deep bass is almost lost once you go outdoors. And of course, they're not pushing the upper bass because it takes a lot of amp to push the deep bass, and so they could have had a bit more volume. But look, you can EQ around that and get it quite neutral sounding, actually, surprisingly neutral, and still sound good. You can obviously EQ anything to be kind of flat if you're given enough filters. But does it sound good? They can sound crap because you had to EQ the hell out of it. Let's go to max the volume. What's that? Oh, yeah, just want to know how loud it goes. I've wasted 25 minutes here. It hasn't told us how loud it goes. Let's find out how loud they go.
This love is ill. I wish that it was different. Don't know what it is that made us so indifferent. We're drifting in the dark. Can we do better? Wish I could rewind back to the start. Can we do better than this? Better.
Well, both of them, when you're playing a single speaker, you know, will start veering towards the screeching as that bass starts limiting. And certainly it adds extra highs on the Tribit Stormbox Blast. A slightly different EQ for maximum volume, which obviously is all about a volume, but it's screech fest. But however, when you have the two, we've got enough full bass that we're kind of taming the you know, where it wants to be a screech. I want to screech. Well, we're not letting it. No, not today, not you. So that's another benefit of having a pair. However, we've got to say, because of how much in the firmwares, in terms of volume, we have lost on these. You didn't even turn me on. We don't turn you on because you haven't got any lights, have we? If you had lights, we'd turn him on, would we not? Yeah. But, of course, the purists will say, brilliant, no lights. So we've lost on 2 consecutive updates. One where they reduced the mids and highs, and one where they reduced the 6 kilohertz peak. And now the tinkering, it's got loss, even at maximum volume now. We've got less mids and highs because they've reduced them purposely, so it's lost volume. Still loud, but not as loud as the Stormbox Blast. I guarantee if we'd gone back to firmware 1, it would be a different story. But however, it would be even more of a screech fest, and that's been the issue. That's why they retuned it. So it is the loudest with a pair. It's the loudest by a decibel, but in terms of peaks, because it's more shrieky on the Soundcore Motion Boom Plus. I wish they'd call it 1A, 1B, or something like that. Easy. Anyway, both got almost identical peaks. 112 decibels. You know, that's blinking loud, as we said. Expect around 6 decibels, 5 to 6 decibels, adding that second speaker. I think we were around 107 decibels for these. Spot on, isn't it? About 5 to 6 decibels in terms of the peak, in terms of the bass. So we got the most bass on the Stormbox Blast. We got the deepest bass. It's just in upper bass where they are around the same level, but you know, at the crucial, for me, 40 hertz mark, that's about as deep as you can really go on these speakers and still say it's obviously rolled off. I'm not arguing about that, but it's, you know, it is really playing down there rather than just completely hidden behind everything else. It's 12 decibels up. Well, we know. So, you know, these are the big differences. They are very different sounding speakers, and no deep bass, loads of bass, deep bass. 12 decibels obviously is another planet. It doesn't do deep bass on the rename them Motion Boom Plus, and as I said, it does have a different tuning at maximum volume, makes it even more screechy because they stick peaks where there weren't any. And the outcome is it's got a lot of highs. It's going to sound clear, but if one on its own is a bit screechy, but there's enough bass now. That's okay in with a pair of them, and we've got a pair and you're going loud. You just want to go loud. I don't think you're really listening for whether someone's dropped a pin. Oh, and I heard something I've never heard in that recording before. The geezer at the back, third from the top, and he had grey hair, and he dropped a pin, and I could hear it. Some people, that's what it's all about. Now, why does I just do that? So, just hear me notes. You know, I'm saying upper bass is similar, but we had stronger mids anyway, and then we've really got lots more highs. Right, I think that's a wrap. What else have I got down here? Just to mention, this is what gets me, and I guarantee it's the same with this thing now where they do. When we're going to rope in more mugs, come on, any mugs out there, and how do they do it? If you want mugs coming at your door, we put a sign on your door saying "Early Bird Saver." It's always cheaper later, isn't it, than the so-called Early Bird Saver where they get your email. Oh, never occurred to me that that's how they get my email. You've had to pay £1 or whatever it was. So, as I sit here today, the price of the Motion Boom Plus, 150 quid, I could get it here. I think the early bird price was like 165. So at the moment, £150, about $180. When it's in stock, I mean, this is going like hotcakes, and there is stock at the moment in the UK, so 195 quid. But Tribit themselves are saying stock is really low. I think there's more coming next month or something. Well, you'd hope so, wouldn't you? About $200. So it is more expensive, the Tribit Stormbox Blast, and there are plenty of other differences that could actually make or break your decision on which speaker are we going to And I'm going to tell you what they're. So where they're made? They're made in China. 46.1 watt hours. I'm not hearing so much feedback now, but in the early days, people telling me the battery was not doing as well as they expect. That's the reason. It goes about as loud as the Tribit Stormbox Blast, although that's doing it and pushing deep bass, which is impressive because it costs lots more in the amp. You can go louder when you're not pushing deep bass like this speaker. 46, but for how loud it goes, 46.1 watt hours is not overly big because we've got a 71.3 watt hour battery on the Stormbox Blast. So battery life. See, that's the thing about the. But how long will it last? And that's ridiculous. People just want to think that you can just tell someone the battery. It's not like it's got the battery sitting there with its own watch and saying, right, now we're discharging. It turns on many things and makes that headline ridiculous. But here's my point: 71 watt hours. But the advantage of that much more capacity is somewhat diminished because it's driving the bass, a deeper bass, and so it's losing more in terms of where it could drive the drivers elsewhere. Both are SBC codec, but we've got used to that. Doesn't seem like anyone cares, so I guess that's why they're going to continue to rip us off. But SBC, and I think a lot of these speakers don't even support AAC. So, and that's it's been coming up a lot lately. I mentioned it with the U-Boom. Nobody seems to pick up on it. Which platform you're on, what codec you're using, makes a big difference in how these speakers are going to sound. It shouldn't, I know, but different codecs set up for different platforms, it does, the ability of the speakers to handle it do vary. And so when I mentioned U-Boom, AAC, how weird is that? They're obviously focusing on iPhone and all that. Flaky on Android, which is the more popular system. So I was pointing that out, and someone else, and I'm not saying I'm late to the party. I've been talking about that for a long time, and nobody seems to care. Just that recently someone said, oh, why does nobody compare it? It's a good question. Other than there's a limited amount of time, you start having to not only say here's how it sounds, but here's how it sounds on another platform, and it'll probably, over YouTube compression, all that, it's going to sound exactly the same. Anyway, is it worth the time and effort? It's huge, and the cost of having two platforms. Nobody is going to do that because Bluetooth speakers are too niche, and nobody's really making much money by simply just having some YouTube videos. They're going to monetize other ways. I can tell you, I lose a hell of a lot. It's a good thing. I'm not here for anything but beer money. So they've got audio stereo pairing, but the Motion Boom Plus will do party mode, 100 plus speakers as well. So again, might be something that if you actually want to hook up 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these speakers, it's going to have to be the Boom Plus. Here's another disappointment. It's a mains lead. A mains lead, by the way, on the Boombox 3 as well. It's a mains lead. As we're thinking, oh, they're all going to go USB-C soon. No, mains lead. So that's a little bit awkward, but we do have USB-C charging on the Motion Boom Plus. They do both have auxiliary inputs. They both can be used as a power bank, but only the Motion Boom Plus can be used to make phone calls. Only the Tribit Stormbox Blast has these wonderful flashy disco lights that you can actually turn off by hitting the button in the correct manner. All you got to do is go like that. It's as easy as that. So they reckon 80 watts, 90 watts. Of what? To what? Who? When? What time? 4:30. I'll get there. I mean, absolutely nothing. So if you want to know what they're saying, 80W, 90W. So mains lead, but we've got 5 volts, 3 amps for the USB-C. So that's good. That's 15 watts of charging. 2.4 kilos. We're talking. It's nearly as loud, or it just doesn't have quite 2.4 kilos, 5.5 kilos. The difference between these in terms of weight is huge. It's nearly as big as my brain. It's that big. It's 3 kilos. The difference between the weights for both of them is more than the weight of the Motion Boom Plus. So if it has one moment where it can tell its grandkids, this was my finest hour, we'll say, I only weigh 2.4 kilos, and this is how loud I can go. With a lot of punch as well, but a little bit tiring at the same time. Both IP67, 6 dustproof, 7, 1 meter water for 30 minutes. If you do drop it in water, they will both float. Brilliant. But only my Stormbox Blast will actually float with the drivers up. Other people are telling me this does not float. Well, it floats for a little bit and then it goes down, but mine does float. I kid you not. 2 107mm woofers. Oh, it's the same size as the Boombox 2. Yes, because they are the woofers from the Boombox 2. 90mm woofers on the Motion Boom Plus, 25mm tweeters, 30mm tweeters, I believe, but I'm measuring it through the grill. Both got 2 passive radiators, but there's only one speaker on the table right now that does have, indeed, titanium drivers. And not just titanium drivers, it also has a neodymium magnet. We said auxiliary input. And the DJs want to know, well, has it got any lag? I didn't measure any lag. My accuracy is down to plus or minus 17 milliseconds. So, to all intents and purposes for me, no lag. But if it's mission critical for you, there may be a fraction. I just can't measure that accurately. We said both got an app where you can do the EQ. And by the way, streaming on YouTube, I'm getting a brilliant 33 milliseconds. That is the best I've ever tested. The Tribit Stormbox Blast, 83 milliseconds. That's also okay. My cutoff point, 80 milliseconds, beyond which you notice the sound is out of sync with the actual lips. So it's kind of like, I really like how immersive it is. So that's about 80 milliseconds. Well, that's about 90 milliseconds. So there you go. That's a wrap. Is it? Yes, it is. Anything on your notes? Absolutely nothing. I think I actually got through it all. We've done it in less than half an hour. 31 minutes it's saying there. Let's see what it is. Post-edit. I thank you for being here right now. You probably just skip to the end where it says conclusion. What can I do? It is what you do, that's what you do. I think you've had to watch one advert anyway, so get something out of it. But I thank you for being here with me at the end, just to hear me say thank you for watching and see you another time, hopefully.
I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Ain't no project wife, got my logic right, cause I'm not your type. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Sorry, ma, I ain't get it right. I'ma just live my life. I ain't about that. I ain't about that life.